Hello again, and welcome to the second video in our series of getting ready for Chem 105. And this is going to focus on proficiency quizzes. Now, proficiency quizzes are one of the more vital parts of this course, but also one of the more misunderstood. So I wanted to take a couple of moments here and kind of go through the process, go through the system, and also give you a little bit of heads up on how to prepare for them and what to do to get yourself ready and make sure that you have every resource available to you. So let's go ahead and get into it here. So what are the proficiencies? The proficiencies make up 10% of your grade. And in that 10% of your grade, what you're really focusing on are 10 essential skills that every chemistry student should know by the time they get to the final exam. Now, the concepts here start with very, very simple concepts, things like knowing your elements and symbols, knowing your polyatomic ions, knowing how to name stuff, knowing how to calculate things and round them to the proper significant figures, and get more complex as we go along. Things like solubility rules, being able to determine oxidation numbers in a redox reaction, being able to write ionic and net ionic equations, which is by far the most difficult one of the 10. So why do we do this? Well, again, the whole point of these 10 items is these are items that we have identified as being kind of the essential skills of chemistry. And if you can do these 10 things, there's a really good chance that you're going to be able to not only pass the course, but be successful in subsequent chemistry courses. And just to give you an example, Gen Chem 1, Chem 105 is the first part in a two-part series. There's a General Chemistry 2. Now, not every student has to take General Chemistry 2. It's based on their own majors and what field of study they're going into, but a lot of people do. And one of the things that we assume in General Chemistry 2 is that you know how to balance ionic equations. Because very quickly, especially in the laboratory, we get into pretty deep concepts of selective precipitation and being able to identify what is precipitating in your solution and how to know the difference and know what's going on and what's being used and how it's all interacting. If you don't know how to do ionic and net ionic equations, that information sails straight over your head. And you start Chem 106 at least a week or two behind, trying to catch up and figure out what you're missing while you're getting into all this other stuff that is new and different and probably not something you saw in high school. So that's the purpose of the proficiencies. There are 10 of them in total. All 10 of them have a purpose. They're all very key concepts. Now, how they work. In order to pass the class, you have to pass all 10 of these proficiencies. Now, it sounds like a daunting task, and in some ways it is. But also, what you have to understand is this isn't a one and done kind of scenario. This isn't a super high pressure, high stakes kind of environment. We're going to give you time to work on these. And how the grading for these goes is you have basically a two-tiered system. Students that pass a particular proficiency on the first attempt get full credit for the assignment, 100%. Now, each proficiency has within it its own standard for what counts as passing or not passing. In some cases, like for the elements, 7 out of 10 is considered a passing mark. And if you get 7 out of 10 on the first try, you get 100% on the proficiency. On the other hand, if you don't pass it the first time, you still have to pass it. Like I said, you cannot pass the course without passing all 10 proficiencies. So when do you get the next opportunity? Pretty much whenever you want. In your lab, there is designated time for working on those. If you come to office hours or to the learning lab here in Updike Hall, you can get opportunities to work on those as well. The general rule of thumb is that you can attempt any one proficiency once a day. So you can keep working on it until you get it done. Once you get it done after that first attempt, a passing score equates to an 80%. So that's the tiering. 100% for the first try, 80% for the second try. If you never pass it, obviously it's 0%, but you've got bigger problems. You can't pass the class anyway. The schedule for when these go down is right here. Now, this is a misprint here. Obviously, you have not April 26th, but rather it's the last Friday of the semester, which I believe is December 6th. So if you don't pass the proficiencies by December 6th, that's the curtain. That's when you can no longer pass the class. When are you going to be given these first attempts? Your first attempt is always going to be in class. And so we have designated weeks where we're going to give you that first attempt. So for elements, that first attempt is going to be in class during week 2. When during week 2, that's up for me to decide just based on kind of when things look good, when we have a good soft spot in the schedule to do it. Chances are pretty good it'll be a Friday. For polyatomic ions, it's week 3. For significant figures, it's week 4, and so on and so on and so on. Notice that the last in-class proficiency is during week 11, which means that you have 5 full weeks after that proficiency to finish, should you need to finish because you hadn't passed all of them yet. And like I said, you can start taking makeup proficiencies if you don't pass the first time pretty much immediately. But you can't take the first attempt until we take it in class. So that's what the proficiencies are. Now, how do you go about preparing for them? Well, you can see here in Blackboard, I've got a folder here called Proficiency Aids. If you open up this folder, what you'll see is that there are 10 folders in here, one for each of the proficiencies themselves. And inside of those, you're going to find resources, whether the resource is just simply for the elements. What do you need to know? There are 118 elements on the periodic table. You're not responsible for all 118. You're responsible for about 50, 54. So which 54 is it? That list will tell you. In addition to those, there are resources here. So if you like flashcards, this is a Quizlet flashcard with the elements and symbols that you can use. This was given to me a number of years ago by a student that made it there and then gave it to me when he was done. In addition to that, we have access to something called ChemQuiz. ChemQuiz is a automated quizzing service where you can get into making your own quizzes to prepare for things. So in this particular case, I just need element name and symbol. I don't need all of this other stuff. Now I can't pare this down to the specifics like I could here. So there were 51 elements on the list. This isn't quite that way. But I can do a fill in the blank and I can hit start and it's going to give me a quiz. And I can put in my answers to the quiz. And ask it to grade it. and it's going to give me feedback. Feedback here is, yeah, you're on the right track. The last four were correct. You didn't spell tellurium right. And in that particular case, that is important. Um, that particular proficiency is graded for spelling in addition to just, the knowledge of the element. So I would have got 4 out of 5, 80%. That's actually okay. The threshold for that proficiency is 70%. I'm above that. I passed. So that's one of the resources that you have. There's also a practice guide here. This is just a document that can give you more practice problems, give you some tips and tricks. This is a cool one. This is doesn't exist anymore. Let's take that off. But you can see each one of these has, at minimum, some practice quizzes, some resources. These are actually YouTube videos that go along with it, and more of the same kind of things here. Here's a quiz generator. Here are some resources to help you out. So that's the proficiency system. And at least for the initial ones, you're going to be pretty okay if you had a decent background in your high school. If you were required by your teacher to memorize the elements and their symbols, memorize polyatomic ions, if you have a pretty good handle on how to do calculations with sig figs and balancing equations, that's the first 4 proficiencies right there. And it's just a matter of time and practice and getting to that point. But the big takeaway that you need to know and you need to understand is that you have to pass all 10. You cannot get by only doing a couple of them. You have to pass all 10 or you cannot pass the class. So if you have any questions about the proficiency system or anything else, again, in that assignment 0, there is a text box at the end that allows you to ask questions. Feel to drop any of those questions in there. But otherwise, thanks for your attention again, and I will see you on Monday.